up in the lead.
Third down, 18, dropping again, looking again, throws up,
That's good! Derek Bucks 30, Bucks 29, 20, Derek Bucks all the way! There it is, the dagger's in, we're going to the Super Bowl!
This is Mike Allstott, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and you're listening to the Cannon Fire Podcast.
another cannon jam, fire 'em, keep on fire, keep on fire.
Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a brand new edition of the Cannon Fire Podcast. I'm your host, as always, Rhett Matthew, joined alongside me, my good buddy and co-host from BucsNation.com, Evan Wanish. Joining us on the show this week, very good friend of the pod, pleasure to have him back, Mr. Gene Thomas from Buck What You Heard, one of the OG Tampa Bay Buccaneer podcasts around town. Boys, how we feeling?
I'm doing good. Happy to finally have Gene back on. He's called in a few times when we've done our call-in shows, and finally happy to have him on here.
Gene, how you doing?
Hey, guys, I'm glad to be on here. This is a lot of fun. I love your show. You guys put out some really good content, and I like that it's balanced and it's not, rah-rah or, putting everything down. So I appreciate what you guys are doing. I'm just glad to be here. Happy Overreaction Tuesday, and I'm sure we will have some discussions on that.
Yeah, we always try to, shoot people straight on this show. We've never tried to mislead our listeners by any stretch of the imagination. We never want to come on here and like you said, it's okay to be rah-rah. Like, I think there's entertainment value in rah-rah. I personally do not want to listen to a podcast or a show that does not like the team that they are talking about. But again, like you said, this is an interesting year just because not only the attention that has shifted from the team, but the expectations that have now shifted from the Tom Brady era to now what we call, I guess, the Baker Mayfield era until it isn't. But, Gene, let me ask you this. We spent a lot of time on Sunday afternoon breaking down the game, and a lot of things the Bucs did well. But, since then, we've had a little more time to watch the game again. Some more things have come out. People have watched film. And we've had a little more time to digest what that Week 1 performance for Tampa Bay actually looked like in the grand scheme of how this season is going to play out. So, Gene, let me ask you first and foremost, what are your thoughts on the Week 1 game and where this Bucs team is right now?
My theme from the beginning, from preseason, has been cautiously optimistic, and I don't think the Bucs have really let me down. I've seen market improvement from the game against the Steelers up until right now. We've continuously saw improvement. We're not talking about turnovers. This will not be a conversation that we have in the show. We're not talking about penalties. I mean, what are you talking about? 19 yards in penalties. I mean, the Bucs have done what they needed to do to get the win. And then, we haven't, we talk about the turnovers that the defense has given the Bucs. I think if you in the grand scheme, I guess if you look at this is game 4 of the preseason, prior to the changeup that we had where we've gone to 3 preseason games. So basically, to me, this is the first game that we've gotten to see all the starters working together, all the starters doing what they need to do to become a cohesive unit throughout the season. And we've gotten to see gameplay from people that, in the offseason, we weren't even mentioning their names because they weren't on the team. I mean, you look at the touchdown, who is our wide receiver who help me out here?
Trey Palmer.
Touchdown, Trey Palmer. We would not, if you go back to March, we weren't even talking about Trey Palmer. Trey Palmer was not part of this conversation. Cody Mock, not a part of the conversation, but here we have guys that have been drafted. They've come in and they're contributing to this team. And these are young guys too. Mm-hmm. You've got quite a youth movement going on right now with the Buccaneers. So it's encouraging. And it's just, for me, it's hard to find negatives. I will take this as a starting point, and then we'll go through the next 6 games and see what you have consistent. And I think I encourage fans to do that. I don't encourage fans to say, oh, okay, we won this game, we're going to go undefeated. We can't do that. We can't look at this team like that. We can look at the positives and we can look at the negatives and say, hey, where have you improved on this? And I know we're going to have bumps in the roads because this is still a new offensive coordinator and this is still a new offensive scheme, but I really believe that this offense will eventually complement what we saw in defense.
Yeah, I think you bring up a lot of good points, especially about after week one. It is funny. We mentioned on our post game show there was a caller and they asked about. They said, "Okay, do you think it'd be a success if the Bucs, just barely make the playoffs, or it was like a deep playoff run?" And I just started laughing. I was like, it's 2 weeks ago. It was the Bucs are going to be getting Caleb Williams and this and that, and now one win later, and it's how deep of a playoff run can they have? So it's always important to remember, like, you can enjoy the win for sure, and absolutely enjoy the win, but at the same time, it's one of 17, and if they lose the other 16, it doesn't matter. Now, they probably won't lose the other 16. They're not going to lose all of them, but they're also not going to win all of them either. So I do think it's important to celebrate the win and be happy about it. But, like, at the same time, stay a little bit level-headed that, like, there's going to be, especially with, like you said, a young team, there's going to be a lot of frustrating points at certain points in the season.
Well, the fact that the Bucs are such a young team is honestly one of my favorite talking points about this season. The youth movement reliance along this roster. We talked about all the things that are going to have to go well for the Bucs, and a majority of them stem from just sheer inexperience. How are these guys going to do? When you talk about both sides of the trenches, right? It's young depth on the defensive line. They rotated in and out. They looked fresh, and I like the way that they were used. Hopefully we can see Kalijah Cansey bounce back and become a factor later on in the season. On the offensive line, we talk about the inexperience. Shout out to Cody Mauch, went out there and played 100% of the snaps on Sunday after showing up with the back injury on the injury report. But, the cohesive unit of that offensive line is yet to be determined in the long term, because we've seen them play one game and not look awful. It was definitely a rough first half, don't get me wrong. I think Danielle Hunter did a lot of damage to Luke Gedeke and certainly brought him up to speed for where he's going to be. As far as the pass rushers he's going to be facing the next couple of weeks. But, those guys have to build consistency.
If I could jump in here real quick, when you talk about the offensive line, I want to give props to the defensive coordinator and the play calling that he was doing against this offensive line. I think that gets lost in the sauce when we talk about, Luke Gedeke is trash and let's get rid of him. Let's go out into free agency and get somebody else. You got to look at what the defensive coordinator was seeing and what he was trying to call against this offensive line, who, again, I think this may be the first game where they've all played together. And and this is not making excuses. I'm just looking at this, 10,000 miles in the air looking down. This is what I'm seeing, that these guys, they did pretty good, and they continued to improve as the game progressed. It wasn't like, they were trash throughout the whole game. They had their bumps in the road, but for the most part, they did what they needed to do.
The noticeable adjustment between the first half offense and the second half offense is really what I think we do need to give Dave Canales credit for. Todd Bowles even praised him in the post game, saying that, the work he did making adjustments in the second half for that offense to go out there and do just enough to win the game. I mean, clearly it worked. This is an inexperienced offensive unit, and what they were able to do in the second half, we can talk about how well Baker Mayfield played and how well everyone else stepped up, but just like you said, a lot of it has to go back and do with coaching, with how he put those guys in a situation to go out there and succeed. Minnesota took away a lot of the play action from Tampa Bay in that first half. I mean, they pinned their ears back, and that pressure was getting there. Baker did not look comfortable until right around the third quarter. I mean, that last drive of the first half when the Bucs ran the 2-minute ultimately wind up with the score, but it took them a little time to settle in. And it's going to take a few more weeks. We talk about the growing pains, but I like a lot of what I've seen so far with Dave Canales. Before this game, he was checking all the boxes, and now when the Bucs are in a situation where, hey, this isn't working for us, we're forced to make some adjustments here, Canales has already proved that he's capable of doing that. Is it going to win them games every week? We have yet to find out. But the fact that we have already seen him put an effort into changing how this team looks over two halves of football, I mean, it's much more of a welcome change for people who did not see the same thing with Byron Leftwich after however many seasons he was here.
Yeah, I think you're seeing a big difference there. And really, I mean, it's not like Dave Canales was some highly sought after offensive coordinator candidate, but this is why they hired him in Tampa Bay. Like that's the reason why you do that. So I do think it is important for the adjustments that he made. It's something that Bucs fans have been screaming for, right? Even before Byron Leftwich, like this wasn't just a Byron Leftwich thing. But before that too, when the Bucs were really struggling, when they just also didn't have the talent, it was more frustrating when they had the talent and the offense wouldn't make adjustments because the coaching staff. Then back in 2018, 2017, some of those teams just didn't have enough talent, and the coaches not making adjustments is the bad recipe. But for Dave Canales, he has lost some talent on the offensive side of the ball. Russell Gage going down, a lot of offensive line reshuffling. I still think they did downgrade a quarterback. Like, I know a lot of people are going to say, well, Tom Brady wasn't that great last year. I still think it's a downgrade at quarterback. So it is a little bit of a loss of talent, but the coaching makes up for that. And I think you saw that on Sunday. Like you said, Rhett, is it going to work every single time? Don't know. Probably not, because that defensive coordinator is also going to be adjusting. And sometimes it's not going to work. The adjustments that you make, that defensive coordinator is going to zig when you zag, and it's not going to work out. But for the game on Sunday, it did.
Hey, continuing the topic on this young offensive line, I kind of wanted to focus more into some things during the game that may not have gone as well as we would have hoped, but in this particular example, I feel like it may be overblown just a bit. I've seen a bit of data going around that's been shared among Bucs groups, and it says something along the lines of Rachaad White finished with negative 40 yards below expectation. Sean Tucker had -5, which was a bottom 5 ranking in the NFL compared to other rookies who made their start that day, or something like that. Some convoluted, very cherry-picked sounding stat. But I wanted to get your thoughts, Gene, on the run game, because a lot of people have said that was a weakness for the Bucs. But for week 1, when we talk about building something for the season, I know Rachaad White left a little bit to be desired, and that first half, again, was rough. The offensive line wasn't opening a lot of lanes. Their longest run of the day was 6 yards. That's not going to cut it. But they did get over 75 yards rushing and the win. So are you concerned with where this run game is right now? Do you think they have a couple of weeks to get better? Or do you think things are as grim as some people would like to make them seem right now?
I think people are overreacting. As I mentioned, this is overreaction week. And again, when I watch Rachaad White and watch what he did, I watch Sean Tucker, I watch what he did. I will say this: the Buccaneers are committed to the run, and this makes the defense have to really respect this, because Rachaad White is just one missed tackle away from taking it to the house. Tucker has opportunities to turn 10 yards into 20 yards, and it's just, again, this is week 1. This is the first time these guys are all playing together. And my expectations are market improvement going into the next week. I really have a lot of trust in this running game. I like what I've seen from the offensive coordinator. I just, again, we need consistency. And that's where this is a starting point. This is where you start building that right here. And again, I believe they're going to come out and this is their opportunity to come out and silence the critics as they go on. I know it's, like I said, not every game is going to be the best, but they've set something out there right now. The play action looked good at times, and there were times, you saw Baker Mayfield making plays with his legs. This is what I expected from him if we were looking at the true Baker. And I do want to take one moment to say Baker Mayfield exceeded my expectations, because when he was down and they were just like hammering him and he couldn't get on track in the first half, they stuck with the plan, stuck with the process, and kept going. And going into the second half, things really changed up for him. And it's a breath of fresh air to see an offensive coordinator who's willing to make adjustments. He's not going to take that square peg and stick it in a round hole and, try to make it work. He's actually seeing what's going on. Hey, I know what you can do. Let's do this. Let's make these adjustments. And we saw it. It was obvious that they had made adjustments from the first half to the second half. And lastly, I hate Byron Leftwich even more after watching this offensive coordinator through preseason up till now. I dislike that guy even more just because of his stubbornness and not willing to try to do that. But again, that may be how he's wired. I don't know, but it was frustrating last year, but it's a breath of fresh air to see that this year.
I'm glad you brought up Baker Mayfield because that's actually the next thing I wanted to ask you. What are your thoughts on Baker? You already said he exceeded your week 1 expectations, as he did mine. I know when someone looks at the box score and they look at Baker's numbers for the day and they say, oh, he only threw for 2 touchdowns and 200-something yards, it's kind of a pedestrian day. But when you look at what the offense was faced with and the situation they were put into during this game, the box score doesn't tell you everything that went down. Like you said, that was a rough first half for Tampa Bay's offense. So the fact that they were able to make chicken salad out of chicken S, if you will, in that second half and ultimately win the game goes a long way. But I will say that, this quarterback battle was fun. If you want to call it a QB battle, that's a conversation for another day. But, I was kind of back and forth. Like Baker, he's an easy guy to root for. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. I'm a Gators fan, so a small part of me wanted to see Kyle Trask exceed a lot of people's expectations, but it is what it is. He's not that guy this year, so be it. I'm not torn up about it. But Baker 110% won me over when he lowered the stiff arm on that defensive back, pushed him out of bounds, and said that he needs to hit the weight room, get his weight back up. I mean, the way that this guy has shown his ability to just get down and play football. Like, I mean, I never would have imagined Tom Brady scrambling for the first down. I mean, we did see it a few times, but Tom Brady stiff-arming a guy out of his way while scrambling for the first down in what is potentially, a game-deciding 3rd and 2. Like that, I have a lot of respect for him. And that's what people have been telling us about Baker. Like, we've got some Baker fans who watch the podcast, and they say, listen, you're going to be excited with the moxie that this guy brings, the attitude in which he plays the game, the swagger that he has attached to himself. He's an easy
turnovers. We got to talk about it. Zero turnovers.
Pretty clean game. I know Robert Hainsey had that holding penalty, a couple of other odd penalties here and there, but a far cry from the discipline issues we thought we were going to have after that first preseason game against the Steelers. But let me ask you, Gene, are you on the Baker train yet? Are you waiting around to see how this thing plays out? Because I know with where he is right now, he's so polarizing that eventually, if and when he starts to play bad, people are going to jump off of this ship. But I mean, as of right now, I'm excited with where we are and really where this team can continue to build this offense into.
I'm cautiously optimistic. And I remember Baker in Cleveland. I remember watching him as he grew as an NFL player, and you saw glimpses, but there was never that consistency. So I'm excited for this. I think he's got the right offensive coordinator that can put him in the best places to really succeed. And again, I kind of go back to that first half, and the old Baker, he would have been on the sidelines pouting or, just not into the game. But this Baker Mayfield right here, he came out, he said, we got another half to go. Let's make this work. And that's what we saw from him. These are the little things that not everybody's looking at, but I'm looking at his demeanor as he's coming off the sidelines, talking to the offensive coordinator, talking to the coach, and you didn't see give up. Whatever you saw from him, his behavior was not, we're giving up. His behavior was, okay, let's put that behind us. Let's go out here and we're going to try this again. And eventually everything started working for him. So I'm cautiously optimistic. I know that we're going to have that one Bucs Life game that Bucs fans are used to at least once a year. And, how he rebounds from that. But I love where we started, and we just have to continue to see market improvement as the season progresses.
Yeah, you mentioned, Baker Mayfield's inconsistencies in Cleveland, and the two things that I mentioned a lot in the offseason when we were talking about the quarterback battle and stuff. And like I said, the reason he's not in Cleveland anymore, the reason he's not in Carolina anymore, like the reason he's not in LA is because of two things. One, he did deal with some injuries in Cleveland, his shoulder a little bit. Was only really fully healthy maybe 1 or 2 years of his time in Cleveland. And then the other was the inconsistency. You would see it wasn't like a Jameis Winston type where there'd be wow plays and then bonehead plays, but there'd be some games where he looked like a good NFL quarterback, right? And then there'd be some games where it's like, can this guy even take you anywhere? So I do think the consistency, and you didn't see it much in the first half, but like it was technically consistently bad, mostly in the first half, and missed a few throws. But then he settled in, and like you said, it could have gone the other way though.
Yeah,
It could have gone the exact opposite way. Let's say they don't score before halftime there. Do they come out in the half and the offense still looks just lost? It could have gone the other way. Instead, they buckled down. And then even like they take the lead 17-10, Vikings respond 17-17. Could have gone down that way too. Like the offenses could have gone right into a shell, but instead, they continue to attack Baker Mayfield. Todd Bowles with a couple critical decisions there to go for on the fourth down. Baker Mayfield with some nice plays, and they were able to get the W. So I mean, and I mentioned this on the post game show. Like, will that be enough to win every game this season? No, because I think you're going to be playing some teams that aren't going to turn the ball over 3 times, right, in one half of football. But it was good enough to win on Sunday. And when you have an offense with a brand new offensive coordinator, a brand new quarterback, and that offensive coordinator isn't just the new offensive coordinator for your team, it's the first time he's ever calling plays in the NFL. So a brand new quarterback, reshuffled offensive line. You already lost your starting center. You lost your starting third wide receiver. Your running backs are still inexperienced. Like you take that offensive performance in week 1 while you're still trying to work out the kinks there.
Yeah, by all means, 20 points a week is not going to beat a lot of teams in the NFL. We saw it happen with the Bucs in 2022. But another thing, that is a big difference for the Bucs in 22 compared to 23, going back to that quarterback position. You had mentioned the miscues from Baker Mayfield in that first half, and these are not the same excuses we're going to be able to make 8-9 weeks from now if Baker is still your starter. But the offensive line kind of getting settled in. Baker Mayfield getting settled in. We said it took him a couple of quarters clearly to look fully comfortable and committed in that pocket as a passer. Stuff like that is going to take a little bit of time. But as far as Baker Mayfield goes, I think folks might need to not get ready, but expect definitely a couple more miscues per game, because Baker Mayfield, while he is a fine quarterback in this system, and we are talking a lot about how Dave Canales can play into his strengths, he is not a pocket passer like Tom Brady. He does not have the accuracy and the placement that Tom Brady does. So again, while he was getting settled in that first half, we can chalk it up to week 1 mistakes. We can chalk it up to, not having the chemistry behind that offensive line yet. We can chalk it up to a good defensive game plan for Minnesota. And while all of those may be true, I do think people should expect some level of human error from Baker Mayfield, because he can look great in this system, but there's going to be a couple throws this year that he's going to want back. And we saw that abundantly in the first half. I mean, Keeft had 3 targets that, I felt like 2 of them could have been touchdowns if the ball was just placed correctly. So it's going to take some time, but you can agree, Evan, that, as far as inconsistencies go, it's still a building process over the next few weeks. And again, just to hammer point my home, Baker Mayfield certainly is not the greatest of all time.
Yeah, I don't think Brady was so good at obviously dissecting a defense, right? He knew you weren't going to fool him. It was rare, right? It was rare that you were going to fool him, because everybody always said, he knows who's getting the ball before, because he knows exactly what defense they're in. Like, he knows who's going to be open where and when. And yeah, like, look, there's a reason Tom Brady's considered the greatest quarterback of all time, and Baker Mayfield's playing for his 4th team in a year. Like, there is a reason. There will be times where Baker Mayfield makes some boneheaded plays this season. And there will be times when the Kyle Trask fans will be saying, see here, Kyle Trask and this and that. But there's also going to be times, I think. And there was times like that on Sunday. Like, he misses Keeft, for a touchdown. I mean, I know Keeft getting a target of all people isn't great, but he's wide open. You got to hit that ball.
Well, not just one target for Keeft. I mean, the first
I understand
half,
that, but
led the team.
He was wide open there. He was wide open there, though. Like, you got to hit that ball. Yeah. That's got to be a touchdown. That has to be 6. There was a few other plays where, like, Yeah, it didn't look good. Like he was, I think Baker before that drive, before the second half, was 3 of 12 passing. Like it wasn't that good, but you got the other side of Baker as well. So I just think this is what you're in for this season. You just hope that, again, just like Gene mentioned earlier, you hope the turnovers are limited because that's been an issue with Baker in the past. So, and if he can limit the turnovers and just be, I know it's a boring thing, but kind of be like this game manager that just doesn't make the crucial mistake, right? Don't let you be the one to lose the game for the Bucs. And I think if Baker Mayfield can do that over the course of the next 16 games, he should be in okay shape, and the team itself should be in okay shape. The only worry I have is that he has proven that over the course of 16 games, he might not be that guy all the time when the Bucs may need him to be.
Yeah, I do want to jump in here real quick, just based off what you were saying. Body of work. I mean, from the Pittsburgh Steelers preseason game till now, haven't you guys noticed how the offense does not look lost when they come on the field? If you compare the last three seasons, maybe 4 seasons, there's always a miscommunication. Somebody's tapping their helmet. There's a miscommunication on a pass. Somebody runs the wrong route. Something just off has happened with the offense, and we haven't seen that with Dave Canales to the degree that we've seen it over the past few years. And that in itself gives me hope that they've simplified this offense to the point that people can come in. You've got undrafted free agents, you've got rookies that are coming in, and they're able to come in and contribute right away because this offense is simplified to the point where they can play off their strengths and they can make it work. So to me, that gives me hope. Again, and I say cautiously optimistic, these are the kind of things that I see that really give me that.
Yeah, and speaking of week 1 mistakes, as far as that inexperience factor or guys just looking lost on offense, like you said, I think the best way that this Buccaneers offense operates is when none of the players on the field have to think too much. Like Baker Mayfield, when he has to think a lot about what he's doing, he's not the best quarterback in the league, as we have seen. We saw it catch up to the Bucs one time, and Todd Bowles had to burn that time out to avoid the delay of game. That was kind of a fumble, but it is what it is. Stuff like that, we can either blame it on inexperience, we can blame it on week 1. It's a multitude of different things, but it is what it is, and obviously they're going to learn and try and get better from it. But as far as where they were and what expectations were, kind of like what you said, the gradual improvement that they have made since that first preseason game definitely gives me hope that they are building things in the right direction. Also, just one more shout out to quarterback Baker Mayfield. For those who did not know, he did bring home the angry runs scepter courtesy of Kyle Brandt on Good Morning Football. So bringing home the hardware to Tampa Bay following his very first regular season start. That's great. One more position group I wanted to talk about on the offense before we look at the other side of the football, because I feel like the defensive conversation is a little more open and shut just because of the experience factor that we've talked about so much tonight. But I wanted to ask about this tight end room, and I had seen this brought up by Kelly in the live chat. By the way, shout out to everybody hanging out with us live. Richard T on the West Coast, our buddy Mikey Kelly, Evan Blythe, Willie Beeman, and the Mod Squad holding it down. G Vegas said, unfortunately, some jerk just opened up his door, not paying attention, and scratched his car while G Vegas is picking up his kids. So he is incredibly heated right now listening to the podcast. But we appreciate you taking a couple of deep breaths and hanging out with us here on this Tuesday night. So back to Kelly's point about this tight end room. Following the common theme of inexperience, this has got to be one of the youngest tight end rooms in the NFL, led by Kate Otten, second-year tight end. You got Payne Durham, who is a rookie, second-year tight end Co Kieft, who did not look his best week 1, but also got some interesting looks, some stuff I wasn't expecting to see to start the game. And then, if I'm not mistaken, Josh Wells or David Wells is that final tight end.
David Wells. Josh Wells was the tackle.
Yeah, was the flex tackle that not a lot of people liked.
David Wells is the pitcher for the Yankees.
Are you?
I'm just joking.
He's pulling double duty. He's a 2-sport athlete now, suiting up at tight end for Tampa Bay.
That was years ago.
But this is an incredibly young tight end room, and again, we haven't not said this about any other position group on the team. But do you have any concerns? Because I think as far as blocking goes, there were definitely some things left to be desired. You do not have the presence that is Rob Gronkowski, or even a player who just has the experience like Cam Brate. Like, I know he wasn't known for his blocking, but he was a staple. And in a tight end room like this, he was going to be your tight end one no matter what. And you kind of don't have that guy anymore. So that lack of a veteran presence in the tight end room, is that going to be a concern as the year goes on? Evan, I'll let you get this one first.
Yeah, I mean, maybe a little bit. I mean, the Bucs tight ends really didn't give you much. Cade Otton was the only tight end to have a catch, 2 catches for 19 yards. Keith obviously with 3 targets, but and Cade Otton could have had a bigger day had he not dropped that one sort of down the seam there. It would have been about 15, 20-yard gain. I do think, like, a lot of the team, it might just take some time. Like, you might have your answer after week 7 or so, like, of what this tight end room will be, but Cade Otton sort of started slow last year too. Like he sort of came on, I would say, more towards the second half of the season. So maybe he's just a guy like that. Maybe that's what he's going to be in his career. Maybe it takes him some time to get his feet wet. You got to also remember, everybody is learning a brand new offense. So that includes the tight ends as well. So while there are young players, they're inexperienced, and they're learning a new offense. Cade Otton only had 1 year in the Bruce Arians / Byron Leftwich system. Now he's going to a whole new system where they're going to be asking the tight ends to do some different things. So I do want to see Cade Otton get more involved. I don't really care to see Keith. I don't know why he got 3 targets. Now, I know a lot of people blame that on the offensive coordinator. At the end of the day, like, the quarterback sort of dictates where the ball goes at more times than not. Obviously, Keith should have had a touchdown, and Baker Mayfield does hit him there. But like, I am looking forward to seeing Cade Otton more and more, because like I said, he was an impact player for the Bucs down the stretch for their offense. And I do think he has not like star potential. I don't think he's ever going to be a top 5, maybe not even top 10 tight end in the entire league, but you can't tell me he can't be a serviceable starting tight end. So I am looking for a little bit more. I'm not hitting the panic button yet though on the tight end room.
All right. I'm right there with you, man. That you pretty much summed everything up for me. I'm not worried about these tight ends. The tight ends were not as much of a factor last year just because of the way that offense was schemed. This year, I think the tight ends will be able to contribute a little bit more. And I think these are both serviceable tight ends from last year. And again, it may take them this season, maybe going into next season, where they really didn't get as much play as they should have. And the problems that we're seeing with the tight ends, or we consider concerns, are all coachable. Nothing physical about these guys. These guys pass the eye test. We know that they can catch the ball when the time comes. It's just getting consistent, getting these guys in here, and getting them acclimated to this new offense. And I think that's the key right there, is because, again, this is the first game where we've seen all the starters together. So this is a good starting point. We know what we've seen from them, and we know what our expectations are as the season progresses. So all we're looking for now is market improvement. Next game, when they go out, we got to see more from them. And that's kind of where I look at this team as a whole. So wherever I'm seeing holes, I'm not seeing anybody outside of Logan Hall that I consider somebody that just is lost in the sauce. Everybody else that I've seen is somebody that can physically go out there and play. A lot of it is getting coached up and being put in the right position. But I just haven't really seen a whole lot of players on this team. I think this is a very quality team, and they're going to surprise a lot of people just with the level of talent that they have.
Yeah, it's funny because we talk about these young position groups, and one of the things that is going to come on strong with this coming up season, when you have as young of a tight end group as the Bucs do, experience for those guys is going to come fast and furious. They're going to get more reps than they ever would have if they had some veteran taking up the snaps ahead of them. So the development for guys like Keith and Cade Otton, especially this year, I really think is going to surprise people. Definitely the latter in Cade Otton, because, like we mentioned, he came on strong last year when the Bucs needed him to. The Bucs were at a point last year where it's like, all right, we're running out of guys on this offense who can step up and make a play. And there were a couple of games where Cade Otton was that guy for Tampa Bay. So hopefully this year we can see a little bit more of that. I know Canales was criticized for a lot of the early play calls, going to Keith.
He trusted his guy.
Right. But it was an interesting look. And if Baker just made the throw, I don't think we would be criticizing those play calls nearly enough, because I of all people, did not expect to see Keefe get three targets in the first quarter of the game. And I don't think Minnesota did either, although they did have a good defensive game plan to shut down the Bucs in that first half. Let's talk about the other side of the football, though. You talked about the defense, and you had mentioned Logan Hall. I want to get to that very shortly. But before we do that, your thoughts on this defense overall? Looking back at 2022, I will put this on the record. This is my opinion. I think that 2022 Bucs defense is way better than they're ever going to get credit for. They kept the Bucs in so many games, and they simply lost because of a piss-poor offense, a historically bad offense. I mean, one of the worst running games in the history of the NFL, like literally statistically, one of the worst rushing seasons of all time, and the rest of their offensive unit just could not figure it out down the stretch. It is what it is. It played out the way that it did. The Bucs went 8-9. The rest is history. But the defense week one, we talk about building something to set up where you're going to be for the rest of the season. Doesn't even look like they missed a step. I know that first half, zone coverage could obviously be a nitpick if we're going to talk about how Justin Jefferson, sometimes guys like KJ Osborne were just running around wide ass open. But for the most part, the turnovers that were produced, the fact that this defense proved to me yet again that with an offense that may or may not be better, they can still play well enough to keep this team in the game. And that's going to take the Bucs a long way this year, I think. But, aside from a couple of depth issues, and again, I want to get your thoughts on Logan Hall here in a second, but what do you think of the Bucs defense after their week one performance?
Is that to me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you're good. You're good.
Adjustments. There's that word again. I love what Todd Bowles has done with this defense. I feel like he's a little bit more confident. When you look at what special teams, I know we haven't even talked about special teams. Special teams in the offense did throughout the game consistently. It gave him the confidence to call the play, to call the game, and just kind of lean on his defense and not have to worry about anything. Antoine Winfield Jr., incredible play. Who is Izian? Is that
Christian Izian, another undrafted free agent who, a young guy who earned his spot.
Yeah, youth right there. We look at some of the players. Vita Vea. Vita Vea's balling out. I mean, eating double teams and stuff like that. JTS was getting, he was getting pressure on the quarterback. Just guys that you're expecting to make plays, they're making plays. I know a lot of guys are, and I'm going to say this because my view on defense is a little bit different. Sacks are sexy. I love a sack. I love seeing sacks on ESPN or whatever. But if you're pressuring the quarterback and you're making the quarterback consistently uncomfortable throughout the game, that's a little bit more important to me than a sexy sack. I again, not taking anything away from sacks, but there are going to be plays that are being made that you can't actually put a statistic to. So I love what the defense has done. Kurt, not my cousins. He just basically, the guy, he was getting rushed. He was getting hit. He was getting touched. And you saw it with the turnovers. And so I think the Bucs defense went out and did what they had to do. And I think they were a key contributor to the Bucs win on Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, defense basically keeping them in the game with the three turnovers. I mean, things could have really unraveled, but not just the three turnovers. The Vikings were up 7-3. They went down into the red zone and down inside the 10-yard line. They had to settle for a field goal. I talked about it on the post-game show. I think if it's 14-3, I think it's a whole different game. I really do think it's a different game. I think the entire game turned out differently. The Bucs probably lose. And then not to mention Christian Izian, taking 3 points, at least 3 points off the board. They're literally taking it from KJ Osborne and taking 3 points, at least 3 off the board from Minnesota. And in a 3-point win, pretty critical points there. So, and Antoine Winfield's turnover also set up the Bucs' first, 3 points of the game. So, yeah, the defense really deserves, I would say, we talk about the offense a lot and everything, but I would say the defense, while they gave up a lot of yards, they did give up a lot of yards. They bent, but they didn't break. and they were able to force turnovers. Now, is 3 turnovers in a single half, is that sustainable? Probably not. So, like, yeah, they are going to need to play better over the course of a 17-game season. But for week 1, they got the job done, and they gave the offense as many chances as possible to go out and win the game, and the offense rewarded them with that. So, I am pretty encouraged by what you saw, and that's the reason why, like, people are saying, oh, the Bucs are going to go 2-15, they're going to go 3-14, stuff like that. It's like, okay, with the defense, the offense could, like, before the season, right? The offense could have been a disaster. Like, the offense could have been an offense of a 3-14, 4-13, whatever team, right?
Exactly.
But the defense just was going to be too good. Like, everybody knew that. Like, the defense on this team was going to be too good.
Well, did everybody know that? All the people picking the Bucs to only win 1 or 2 games.
You have to say the people in the Bay Area, in the Tampa Bay area. Let's put it that way, because anybody outside of that 3-letter network, 4-letter network, they've got narratives that they're working with, and I don't want to even get into that. But I didn't mean to cut you off, but it frustrates me when I hear that. When I see the Bucs are 32, listed as 32 in the power rankings by certain people because they don't know anything about this team.
Yeah, so. No, and I mean, and just the defense was like, and honestly, I think this is going to be the script for like a lot of the Bucs games this season. Like, defense going to probably have to keep them in the game a little bit. Like, the offense might sputter at times. Defense hopefully can create a turnover or 2 that jump starts them, and then at the end of the game, the Bucs end up on top by 4 or 5 points. I don't think the Bucs are going to be blowing many teams out this year. Like, they're not equipped for that, but that's okay. Like, you don't have to be equipped for a 30-point blowout, 3 times a year. So I do think that the defense got the job done. They did the job, and there's the young players like Izzy and stepping up and JTS. And I actually thought, Logan Hall, he made a play on Sunday. He had the 1 run stuff that he was able to do. And Vita Vea down at the goal line had nice run stuff as well. So I thought the run defense was good. The Vikings passed the ball a lot. Like I said, a lot of yards. That's a pretty good receiving core that the Vikings have. Obviously, Justin Jefferson being what he is. You're not going to stop him. I said that even before the game. Like, you just hope to contain him. You're not going to stop him.
It right there.
Yeah. I mean,
he got a lot of yards, but he didn't find the end zone. Had 150 yards, no touchdowns, and that's what's most important.
Yeah, we knew he was going to eat. We talked about it on the game preview show. Would you rather have Justin Jefferson with 150 yards? Or Justin Jefferson with 45 yards and everyone else around him having 100-plus yards? That's kind of the conundrum the Bucs defense found themselves in. But, Gene, 2 questions for you. First, our buddy Richard T. all the way out in L.A. wants to know, where can I get that shirt you're wearing? For the people who are not watching us on YouTube, Gene is rocking a custom Buck Around and Find Out shirt.
I got this on Etsy, man. I just happened to be – I was getting my stuff ready for Gasparilla. And I just happened to put in Buccaneers, and this shirt came up. I was like, oh, I got to have that.
I like it. Definitely unique. So let me ask you another question. Logan Hall, you said earlier he is lost in the sauce. Do you not have high expectations for the Buccaneers 2022 draft pick?
I am trying to not be a hypocrite, but with JTS, when JTS came out, a lot of people weren't happy with the pick. He was getting close to getting home. Getting pressure on the quarterback, couldn't quite get there. The next year, we saw market improvement. What I've seen from Logan Hall when I've watched him, he's been getting manhandled. Just, it doesn't matter who it is. Tight ends, I've seen tight ends do it. I've seen offensive linemen do it. I think the one play that you mentioned was the exception, not the rule. But if you go back and just watch his play, randomly pick up plays that he's in, he doesn't have the burst. He's not moving offensive linemen. He's not making any impact on a rushing attempt. And the goal this year is get home with 4. That's gonna be the key to the Bucs being successful in a lot of games. Get home with 4, and I just don't see Logan Hall as part of that equation right now. Again, this is his 2nd year. I always give people 3 years to get an idea of what they are. 1 year might be a fluke. 2nd year may be you look at the behaviors of that player, and if it kind of coincides with the previous year, you know he's trending upward. But if you have a guy that's just continuously getting manhandled, it's like his heart isn't in it. I don't want to say that, but what it looks like to me, where he's just getting moved around.
Yeah.
And that is frustrating for me. There are other players that could have made this team that, are sitting out because this guy was a draft pick. So again, he's got to do better. You got to see market improvement throughout this season. Otherwise, it's just kind of what you get. But yeah, he did have that one tackle for loss, but was that the exception or was that the rule?
Yeah, with the youth movement mantra the Bucs are going to be following this season, a guy like Logan Hall certainly going to get the reps that people have been looking for,
Absolutely.
the ones that he didn't get last year. He will be heavily involved in that rotation, and hopefully he can make some more plays because, like you said, I think personally, I think he just needs the reps. Like, he really wasn't on the field last year. He wasn't. I don't know what his total snap count was.
And again, that's just like my first observation.
Yeah,
Anytime that I've seen him, I just haven't seen the burst. That was like that tackle for loss was like, so okay, here we go. I could see that, but it wasn't consistent. So again, 3 years, I always look at players. People are like, oh, he's a bust. His rookie year, he's a bust. No, you have to give him time to progress, get acclimated to the defense, and get put into positions. When they get an opportunity to make plays, they have to make those plays. If not, you kind of add that to the behaviors that you've seen, consistently. And that's kind of how you build your idea of whether he's going to make it or not.
All right, I wanted to save this topic to wrap up this week's show. And I know it's going to be a heavy topic. And, Gene, I haven't heard your opinion too much on the matter. Mike Evans scored a touchdown for Tampa Bay, first one of the season against Minnesota last Sunday. Scored that touchdown, noticeably did not celebrate at all with any of his teammates, ignored everybody, walked to the sideline, sat down. Now, that part I'm not worried about because a lot of people know, based off of common sense, Mike Evans is in straight business mode this year. He made it clear that, listen, if the Bucs do not want to sign this deadline, or they don't want to sign a contract by the deadline that his agent set, then he's going to focus on playing the best ball that he can. And regardless of a couple of drops week one, he went out there and did that. You know what I mean? He went out there and I think played to the best of his ability for sure. But one, do you think this mentality from Mike Evans is going to become an issue at some point this season? We talked about it on the last show. I want to get your thoughts. The Bucs have yet to name team captains. Still no official team captains on the team. Mike Evans has been one for the last 4 years. So is that going to potentially be an issue? And in your opinion, should the Bucs pay Mike Evans at the end of the season?
And I'm talking as a fan. I'm going to say yes. We've seen he's consistently been that guy.
Yes, they should pay him, not yes that it's going to be an issue.
We need to pay him.
Yeah, okay.
He is the face. He is the face of the franchise. And again, I'm just saying this as a fan. I understand this is business. I know somebody's going to come in the chat and say, but what about business? No, I'm talking as a fan. If you're a season ticket holder, that's the guy you're coming to see is Mike Evans. You're not coming to see some other guy that they're bringing in off the street. You're coming to see Mike Evans. You've got a guy who's the greatest offensive weapon the Bucs have ever seen. I've seen Kevin House. I've seen Keenan McCardle. I've seen Joe Jurevicius. I've seen James Wilder. I've seen all these players. And when I look at Mike Evans, Vincent Jackson, Mike Williams, RIP to Mike Williams. And again, nobody stands out like Mike Evans has. Mike Evans has deserved this. I understand how the contracts work and where he's, giving up money to where he's gotten the money on the back end, but he's made the sacrifice at that time and helped the Bucs to bring players in. And he's done that on multiple occasions. I mean, he's just been the ultimate team player. And I can't even begin to talk about what he's done, what he's meant for the Tampa Bay area. And so I factor all that stuff in. And I say that to say this, the guy has not let up. I mean, last year he balled out last year. And no injuries. He was healthy. He was taking care of his body. He was a factor. I mean, I remember this guy sitting here talking to the quitter in the New York Jets game, trying to calm him down, and just the leadership that he has. I mean, I guess there's so many different things that I think of when I think about Mike Evans. And I am wearing a Mike Evans jersey or a Mike Evans T-shirt every game this year, just because I support the man that much. And again, the Bucs need to pay him. I would make the exception. You look at some of the people that they've overpaid at times, and when you look at Mike Evans statistically, and what he's been for the the rest of the community, you have to pay the guy. But I'll get off my.
No, by all means, keep going. But I do agree. I'm glad that you highlighted that you're looking at this from the fan perspective, because there's always going to be two lenses you can wear when looking at the business that is the National Football League. And you're going to have your opinion as a fan. You're going to have your opinion as someone who's like, listen, from the point of view of the general manager who is now paying the bills for putting together the Super Bowl roster, for unfortunately Mike Evans, who now is just a victim of bad timing. Like, I think 2 years ago, the Bucs would have certainly got this deal done. I think if Mike Evans said this on the last show, I think if Mike Evans was 29 years old right now, the Bucs may have gotten this deal done by now. But the Bucs should pay Mike Evans. And as a fan, it disappoints me the very real possibility that this could completely sour the relationship between Mike Evans and the Bucs on the way out. You don't think so? I mean, I don't think it's going to be like a Calvin Johnson Detroit type thing. Don't get me wrong. But I would hate for him to look back at his potential final year in Tampa Bay and be like, I can't believe that team did that to me. Because like a player like Jameis Winston has that chip on his shoulder. He's been vocal about that. He's like, I can't believe the Bucs did that to me, and I'm never going to play for them again. Not to say Mike Evans would be vocal about the same things, but in his own mind, he has to be thinking that, right? If the Bucs do not pay him, he's probably got to be thinking in the back of his mind, like, damn, I did all of that for this franchise, and they didn't want to pay me.
Mike Evans is the highest paid player in Buccaneers history. The Bucs have paid him plenty. So like, and I'm gonna use the word, right? I'm gonna use the word that Gene is there, right? At the end of the day, like, this is how Mike's gonna look at it. Like, it's a business, right? So like, this is the team that drafted him. Like, this is the team that he won a Super Bowl with. They've given him 2 contracts. Like, one of them was a huge contract. I know the restructures and everything. Like, everybody says, oh, he's done so much. Like, yeah, the restructures, like, sure, like, he has done a lot to help them. At the end of the day, they're not pay cuts, though. Like, he's not taking less money. He's just getting it in a different way. So, like, I don't think Mike Evans would look back on this and have any ill will, towards the Buccaneers. But at the end of the day, it's a contract negotiation. It's not like, Mike Evans was lied to by the Buccaneers and the Buccaneers promised him he'd get a contract. And then when it's time to do it, it's nowhere to be found, right? But at the end of the day, like, the Buccaneers. Sorry, and I agree. I agree with Gene. I agree with Rhett. I agree with probably most of the people in the chat. Like, I think the Buccaneers should pay Mike Evans too. Like, I think it's an easy decision. At the end of the day, though, I do also think the Bucs are maybe smart to just look out and see just how this season goes. Could be a transition year. Could be a big transition year for the Bucs. Now, they're trying to pay off that Super Bowl bill. Have a lot of players that up in the air, right? Devin White, if he continues to perform the way he did in Minnesota, like, perhaps he is getting that big contract. If he doesn't, maybe you don't, and that's not on your books. Like, I think the Bucs are trying to figure out who they are as an organization first before they want to commit to Mike Evans. And I understand that the frustration that fans have. I get it. Like, I really do. And like I said, if it was up to me, like, Mike Evans would be signed right now. But at the end of the day, like, it is a business, but like, there should be some exceptions, as like Gene said. But I don't think the way the situation's playing out, I don't really think Mike Evans going to have any ill will. Now, it could have if he decided to, hold out, or if he decided to skip practice or training camp, or said, I'm not going to play in games. Then you're getting into that territory maybe where, like, that situation could be sour, and that would be a real shame. So thankfully it's not going down that route.
Could you compare this to Levante David? How they let Levante David test the market?
Yeah, I think it's similar. I think it is. I think the Buccaneers want to see what 31-year-old Mike Evans' market value is going to be versus the other NFL teams. Well, and then we'll see if he can come back to Tampa. I think that's the way the Bucs are looking at it.
And just like every other big name free agent they've had over the last couple of years, Carlton Davis, Jamel Dean, Levante David, they let all those guys test the market. And, I know Carlton Davis, Jamel Dean, they came back on team-friendly deals, but even those guys, Levante David probably went and checked out the open market.
Yeah. Chris Godwin, you mentioned Carlton Davis, happened.
With all due respect, maybe they were surprised that, hey, these other NFL teams just don't hold as much value, or this isn't the payday you were potentially looking for. So I do think that ultimately the Bucs are going to get Mike back, and I think this is going to play out something like that, where he does get the opportunity to talk to some other teams, see what kind of offers he can get. I think the Bucs are going to bust their ass to get him back. But from the business perspective, from the team building perspective, I will put a bow on it with this. The Bucs are just looking at the other pieces they're going to have to pay. And Tristan Wirfs, Antoine Winfield Jr., Chris Godwin, I believe next season.
Well, it would be Wirfs and Godwin would be 2025.
Yes. Those three players alone are close to 40% of your payroll. And for the Bucs, unfortunately, this season, they have 42% of their payroll taken up by players who do not play for the team. Russell Gage, Tom Brady, and Ryan Jensen being those players. So for Mike Evans, if the Bucs were not in the situation they were now, I think that contract would have been signed. But from the team building perspective, the pieces that have yet to be paid for the Bucs, you're gonna count on that youth as more of a sure thing. I think the Bucs are much more comfortable paying Chris Godwin $20+ million a year at this point than potentially Mike Evans after this season. And that's unfortunate because, again, as a fan, Mike Evans deserves it. But from a team-building perspective, I think the way that this plays out, if you're the Bucs, you're either going to have to wager bets on riding it out with Mike Evans for the next couple of years, which is a very strong uncertainty, or you're going to rely on the youth of a guy who's a couple of years younger and Chris Godwin, who I think, just turned 27?
Something like that, yeah.
And what's intriguing here is historically, if you look at the Bucs going back, let's go back to the 80s, they have never had a roster this loaded with this many uncertainties on who you bring in. I'm even talking about the original Super Bowl team. You look at this roster, and they're continually, because they've done well with drafting, they've done well with free agency, you're continually having to look at these high salary guys, try to keep them here to keep this team whole. And fans, we've never seen this before. So this is, you kind of have to trust the process and hope that that's what we're looking at here, is a general manager that will bring the best of the best in and make it work from there.
Yeah, usually in the era of bad teams, you've got one or two guys on that team who you really got to worry about come contract time. The cycle of players in and out, you never have talent build up to that level to where it's like, man, now we got 5 guys on this team we got to figure out how to pay. And all 5 of them could potentially break the market that they are in. But Evan, your final thoughts here on the Mike Evans topic.
Yeah, back in 2018, it was easy to re-sign Mike Evans. It was easy to re-sign, Mike Evans, and easy to re-sign Ali Marpet to a new deal. And let's re-sign Adam Humphries and Cameron Brate. Let's, because you're right. When you have a bunch of pieces, when you only have 4 or 5 pieces you want to keep, you can afford to give those 4 or 5 pieces pretty much whatever they want. So, and ultimately, though, I just wanted to piggyback off of what you said, Rhett, where this is way too early. We have an entire football season to get to, and not only an entire football season, basically almost an entire offseason free agency period to get to. But I do think that ultimately it's going to be a very, very stressful time and nerve-wracking time for Bucs fans. But I do think Mike Evans probably returns to the Buccaneers on a 2 or 3 year deal, I would guess, to finish his career in Tampa. But I do think it's going to be a couple of very nerve-wracking weeks in free agency for Bucs fans. But I do think, just like Levante David, you're going to see all the things. Oh, Mike Evans testing the market. Team X is interested in Mike Evans. Team Z is interested in Mike Evans. And then I do think Mike Evans ends up returning to the Bucs. Like I said, could be wrong. A lot can happen in those, how many months it is. But I do think at this moment right now, if I had to completely guess, I'd say Mike Evans probably coming back. Although it wouldn't, if you tell me Mike Evans is playing for another team next year, I don't think it's preposterous, right? Because we've gotten to this point now. He is going to hit free agency. I think it's going to happen. I just think he's probably going to return to Tampa.
I would be nauseous to see him in a Giants uniform next year. Evan thinks
throw
Mike will be back. I think Mike will be back come free agent time. Gene, what do you think of Mike Evans? Will he be back?
Yes, he has to be back. He is a Buccaneer. He's nothing else. If nothing else, he's a Buccaneer. And it's the only way that you can look at him. Just like Levante David. No, he's a Buccaneer. Okay. And when you look at Warren Sapp, even though Warren Sapp was in a Raiders uniform, Warren Sapp is a Buccaneer. Yeah. Rondé Barber, great example. Buccaneer. It's the only way you can look at him. And that's kind of how I look at Mike Evans and what he's done. He spoiled the fan base for 10 years just with his play. So, again, he will be in the Ring of Honor. Whether people like it or not, he's going to be up there.
He's going to be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, he's going to be a Hall of Famer. He will be. So, I trust Jason Light. Again, if you guys don't, people that are listening, first time you've seen me.
Is Jason Light's first ever draft pick, though? First ever draft pick.
Yeah.
Jason Light is my guy. I've been through so many horrendous general managers in my Bucs fandom here. And I can tell you, between Rich McKay and Jason Light, everybody else is trash. And that's just my personal opinion. I love Jason Light and what he's done and the help that he's had with Greenberg and, that staff that he has there to really keep this cap-friendly team and not have us kicking the can down the road like the Saints.
It's funny, too, when you think about, what people were saying online about Jason Light 4, 5, 6 years ago. Every other week it's, hey, fire Jason Light. This guy has really done a number on this team. And here we are, a full Lombardi trophy later. But
I've lost like 10 followers on my podcast because I would not badmouth Jason Light. I'm like, you got to trust the process.
I don't know what to hear it, man.
Yeah, I don't know what he's going to do. I don't know what his picks are going to turn into right now. We have to look at his body of work at the end of the day. Like I could tell you that Mark Dominic's a bum. Sorry, I can say that. Bruce Allen's a bum. And, I can say that because you can look at their body of work and tell. But right now, just what Jason Light has done, it's my guy. I talked to him in Germany.
And if Jason Light deserved it, you would say he's a bum too. Like if he deserved it, like he doesn't deserve it. Like, is there bad moves? Yeah. Like, guess what? Every NFL GM has bad moves. Like exactly. there is no GM in the NFL that's hitting every draft pick. Every free agent they sign is not going to be a great player. Like every big money contract, every re-signing that they make is not going to work out. Look at Ryan Jensen. I mean, obviously it didn't work out because of injury things, but that re-signing, if Jason Light had a magic wand that could go back in time, he wouldn't sign it. Like, it is what it is. Like, you can't predict.
Who would you replace Jason Light with?
Yeah, I mean, it's not an easy question to answer.
Yeah. Before we go, we did mention it briefly, but Richard T brings it up in the chat. Rest in peace, former Tampa Bay Buccaneer Mike Williams. We talked to you guys at the end of the last podcast, and I know that the update we had at that time was that he had been taken off of life support and was breathing on his own, but unfortunately his family confirmed this morning that the 36-year-old former NFL wide receiver passed away due to his injuries from the job site. So incredibly sad. We talked a lot earlier this week about the memories that both Evan and I have watching Mike Williams. That 2010 Bucs team, man, his rookie year, that's one of my favorite Buccaneer teams of all time. I mean, the Tom Brady era stands alone. The 2002 team obviously going to go down as one of the best in franchise history, but not a lot of people look at the good that Raheem Morris, Josh Freeman were able to do with, guys like Sammy Strotter, Mike Williams on that offense. He had LeGarrette Blount, Cadillac Williams out of the backfield. Aqib Talib still very much playing well. Oh, God, who else was still on that team? That was before Mark Barron, but I'm trying to remember who else was in that second.
Gerald McCoy was on that team, I believe.
Yeah, Gerald McCoy's rookie season in 2010. I think Cody Grimm might have still been on that team.
LeGarrette Blount.
Yeah, that was the breakout year for LeGarrette Blount, too. I remember Cadillac went down, and we got to see him go in there and just rumble and tumble his way to a couple of Super Bowls with New England as well. So good for LeGarrette Blount, but incredibly unfortunate loss.
Caveman gang.
For the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So we remember Mike Williams. But, Gene, I do want to say thank you for jumping on the podcast with us this week, man. It's always a really good
thank you. This has been so much fun. I love talking football and love talking football with friends even more. So I appreciate you guys. And, I hope to see you guys when I'm there for Gasparilla. And
Yeah.
It's going to be fun. Definitely be fun.
Yeah, 100%.
Shout out to the crew of Santa Margarita.
Yeah, there you
You're
go.
going to do the thing.
Got to get you down to Tampa more often for sure.
Yeah.
It's always a good time talking ball with you. Just such an organic conversation, and we appreciate your company. This will not be the last time this season that we talk to you either.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe we can answer some calls next time we have you on. But, folks, if you are not aware, where can they find you and your content?
You can go right over here to YouTube, Buck What You Heard. Be sure to check me out. Definitely, I will be doing phone calls this Thursday, 7 p.m. Eastern. And I welcome everybody. I mean, regardless if your opinion differs from mine, it's a safe place. We've got people from different NFL teams that drop by, and just, give their opinion. So greatly appreciated. And, I think that's what fans need more so than anything. And instead of listening to a 3-letter network, 4-letter network, they need to be able to give their opinions like we've seen in the chat. The chat has been amazing, by the way. Everybody in the chat, thank you for contributing because it's made the show fun. And I appreciate you guys as well. But yeah, just Buck What You Heard. Come and check it out. Get comfortable. I'll have some beers. We'll have a good time.
Yeah, Gene was on our best behavior for us tonight, he said, so no beers, but hopefully we can crack open a cold one or two after the next Buccaneers victory that we have you on. Our buddy Roachfat in the chat brings up Aurelius Ben, man. Just another name from that 2010 roster. He was underrated. He was a stud.
He was just always injured, and I think that was what hurt the most is that we saw what he could potentially do, but he just stayed hurt all the time.
Yeah, when he was on, man. But after that season, he just couldn't stay consistent. Follow our podcast on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. All of those are Cannon Fire Podcast. Best place to go for updates on the show. And, of course, Tampa Bay Buccaneer news as it happens. Speaking of Bucs news as it happens, you can follow my co-host Evan on Instagram at Bucs_daily. You can also find him on Twitter at EvanNFL and check out his written work at BucsNation.com. What have you got dropping this week?
Yeah, obviously you're going to be taking a look at the Davy Jones Locker Q&A with the Bears site manager as well. Going to be previewing the Bears game and also going to be doing the X factor for the game. So like which one player is key for the Buccaneers to be able to secure the victory. So keep an eye out for that.
Yeah, be on the lookout this week as well on our podcast feed. We are going to be talking with our buddy Ryan from Bears Talk Underground for a little collaborative, appearance game preview kind of deal. Just something extra we'll do for you guys this week. And then be on the lookout for our Week 2 game preview on Friday. That should be live, I think. Not 100% sure yet. Last but not least, you can find myself on Instagram and Twitter at Rhettakus, RHETTAKUS. If you follow me, I will follow you back. But that's the show. Thank you once again to our special guest, Gene Thomas from Buck What You Heard. I'm your host, Rhett Matthew, signing off for my co-host, Evan Wanish. We'll talk to you in the next one. Until then, and as always, go Bucs.